I'm going to give a short talk, first of all, about links, just about 5 or 10 minutes. And then Richard's going to give a short talk about Algovera. And then we'll go more into the logistics of the hack. And then we'll end with a social for you all, if you can hang on, in GatherTown. So we'll, the link's in the email, but we'll post it at the end as well. So first of all, welcome. And I'm really excited for us to actually kick off today. So first of all, I'm going to explain a little bit about what LYNX aims to do. So LYNX is a Web3 based backend infrastructure for wearable devices. So this includes traditional trackers like watches, but also biosensors from like innovative technologies that are being developed, we're hoping as well, things like patches, and also neurotech. So my background, I said, was neuroscience, and we're really passionate about neurotechnologies and where that's going. And I'll talk a bit about that in a minute as well. So at the moment, the situation is personal biometric data from wearables is collected and stored by individual hardware manufacturers, and the data is often sold to third parties and affiliates with no real way for users to provide detailed permissions on commercialization or be rewarded or share in the profits of commercialization. And also with the situation, personal data is also at risk of being exposed, for example, through data breaches around centralized storage. And another issue with the current situation is that data is only analyzed with algorithms developed in-house, so like proprietary algorithms, and data from different devices doesn't have the ability to be integrated during analysis. And together that stifles innovation and also limits the insights that users can have on their data. So LYNX aims to ensure full privacy and ownership of data for individual users through decentralized technologies. And the vision is for no third party to ever see or own a user's raw biometric data ever again. And we also aim for users to be able to combine data from different wearables to give advanced insights into individual health, well-being, and performance. There's obviously other use cases, for example, with the metaverse and gaming and things like that, but we're focusing first of all on health, well-being, and performance. We also want to enable users to choose different third parties to interact with, the idea being that those third parties can provide personalized and rewarding experiences, for example, through tokens. So we essentially see LYNX as a layer upon which use cases that want to leverage biometric data will sit. So for example, use cases might be around stress management or performance hacking or monitoring health, people with long-term health conditions, right the way up to emerging digital therapeutics as well. And ultimately as well, decentralized science, DeSci, which is something I'm quite passionate about. And essentially the idea with LYNX is that users will create and own a digital biometric clone of themselves. So that would include both mind and body. Or to put it another way, users will become a thing within the Internet of Things. So that's a bit about LYNX's aims and vision. You might be wondering why we're all doing this hack today, why we want to do a hack with you all. So firstly, the aim of the hack is to test the assumption that we can actually bring together a group of data scientists or just people interested in biometric data, and they can all come together and create algorithms which are able to actually pull out meaningful insights from biometric data that they've never seen before or even know very much about. Secondly, to test the assumptions that this can be done with Web3 tools. So we're using decentralized file storage, Ocean protocols, decentralized data marketplace, and Ocean's compute to data function as well. So that's where algorithms come to the data rather than you giving your data to a data scientist. And Richard will explain a little bit more about compute to data in a minute. So there's a lot of technical elements that we're using this hack to learn more about. And last but not least, the aim is to also create an initial builder-focused community for LYNX. This is why everyone who takes part in the hack will be given a POAP at the end. And the aim is that this POAP will serve as a key for access into the LYNX developer sandbox in the future when we have one of these. So why EEG? Why are we using EEG for our first hack? You might be wondering. So EEG data, it's essentially brain activity data that's picked up from electrodes or touching the scalp. And I put together a document about EEG data that explains a bit more of these basics, which was circulated in an email yesterday. So please take a look at that. There's also a tip or two at the end of the document as well that you might want to look at. So it's a really exciting time for EEG data because ultimately of consumer neurotech wearables. Essentially, we're at a point now where EEG electrodes can be integrated into headphones. And we've actually lined up a talk for you next week by a neurotech company who are pioneering sensor technology in the space. And we actually hope to do a hackathon with them in the future as well, in a future hackathon. And the types of data that EEG can be used to identify ranges from like cognitive state, so how sleepy someone is, how much they're concentrating, up to healthcare and diagnostics, looking at things like sleep disorders, even cognitive decline, up to human-computer interaction, which is super interesting. There's been some really cutting-edge research lately around, pass thoughts, which are just like you thinking of a password, and that is then used as your password because it's like a biometric signature, right the way up to maybe muting notifications on your desktop when your headphones detects that you're concentrating and you're in a state of flow and they don't want to disturb you. So there's lots that can be done with EEG data, but it's also really interesting it's an interesting time for neurotech from an ethical point of view. So we're really close to a situation where this very type of personal data will be owned by one centralized company, whether that turns out to be Elon Musk's Neuralink or one of the big tech companies who all have neuroscience departments and neuroscientists working for them. So Meta, Google, Apple, Samsung all have those things. And so what we're keen to do is to create a solution with Lynx whereby this isn't the only option for progress in neurotech and neuroscience, and it's not the only choice for users either. And finally, why Ocean Computer Data? Well, we're building Lynx with Ocean Protocol, and we're really excited to learn more about their computer data functionality, because this is something that's really important for our solution because of our vision for no one to have to give their raw data away ever again for analysis. And computer data is a way of ensuring this privacy aspect. So that's it for Lynx. First of all, are there any questions before we move on to Algovera about anything that I've said there?
One question. How would you get the data from devices, for example, from watches? I mean, for example, I use a Samsung watch or an Apple watch. How would you get the data from there? Because that's proprietary, no?
Yeah, so that is proprietary. So that's sort of like the sad path of what we're doing. So you as the user, you would have, maybe you wear your Samsung watch, but maybe you have open source headphones, BCI headphones. So you would permission the API of your Samsung watch to go to the Lynx data wallet, but again, it would still be owned by Samsung. But then the brain data would be owned by you. So the ideal case is that hardware will start moving towards more open source owned wearables. And to be honest, like I think we've heard about, so for example, Emotive, the BCI company, they want to move towards this more user ownership, data ownership model. So we envision a world where hardware companies will have to move to where the consumer wants to be. And there are open source hardware, but that is a big hurdle. So in terms of, there is the proprietary sort of devices like Samsung, Apple Watch, and they will always collect the data, but there are also hardware providers who are completely open source and don't currently control the data backend. So yeah.
Good, thanks.
Cool.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, go for it.
What are your thoughts on users being able to sell your health data to insurance companies to get more accurate premiums?
That's a really interesting question. So for one thing, with the data, so we're actually collaborating with Robin in Data Union, and we think that the health data, we're seeing those we're thinking of those things in terms of governance, of union type governance. So users might have a group of people who maybe give them ideas about, the best ways to monetize their data in an ethical way if they want to do that. But yeah, it's a really interesting point, and it's one of the things which we're talking to ethicists about, like how best we can kind of like design for these types of situations, because we want to ensure, like with our platform, that there isn't just any old use case on there. Like we only really want things which are going to necessarily benefit the user, and we want to help guide users so they know exactly what they're opting into as well, like informed consent, something that's really important to us. But for the moment, we're concentrating like on the tech side, like proving out, is it even possible? And then we're hoping to grow our team a bit more to bring on more ethicists to kind of get into the sort of the nuances of those ideas, because I think they're incredibly important. And there's lots of people in the space who are working on these things. So we're trying to form relationships at the minute to try and get those things right. I don't know if that answers your question, or if Alex, you've got anything you want to add there on that. Cool.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you.
Cool. They're really good questions. Also, we should remind you all, we have I don't know if all of you are in there, but we have a Telegram group, which is like our the community. And like, if you have any questions at any point around the hackathon, please post in the Algovera's Discord. But if it's more around like, you know, these kinds of questions around data and links, please, we have a neurotech group, and it would be cool if you guys could post in there as well, because there are like some ethicists hanging around in there, and they might have their ideas as well. And ultimately, we're going to have a community to help, you know, hone these ideas a lot more, and it'd be cool to have more people like you part of that. So I can post the link in Telegram for the Telegram group in the chat in a minute. Cool. Okay, Richard, do you want to do your presentation now?
Perfect. Yeah, let me share my screen. Okay. Can you see this? Perfect. Okay. Yeah, so Sarah touched on a few things about how we don't want big tech in charge of our algorithms. And especially for the case of neuroscience, it's terrifying that they would be able to read our thoughts. What we've been looking at in Algovera is like, I guess, AI algorithms in general, more broadly. And so, yeah, I'm just going to talk today about like what are some of the issues with centralized AI and how we think that decentralized AI can help. So AI is becoming more centralized. We hear all the time about how big tech controls large amounts of user data. And this is one of the key things that Web3 is trying to solve, is to give ownership of the data back to users and also reward them in terms of the value that it can generate. But there's also other components to the AI stack. So we've just started to decentralize the data infrastructure. But, you know, big tech also has a lot of, you know, top AI researchers and stuff, like most of them work in the big companies. And also they own, you know, a lot of the cloud infrastructure, like computation, storage, even the physical infrastructure in terms of office space. And so if we want to decentralize AI, there's more than just decentralizing the data. We need to decentralize the layers above, whether that includes algorithms, people, and even cloud infrastructure. And why is centralization of AI a bad thing? Well, we think it's apparent that the way it's done at the moment is basically optimizing for profit and also extracting value from users. And so, for example, my background is in machine learning. As I said, I worked for a tech company. And when I joined, I didn't know what team I was going to be on. And then I was put on the surveillance team, where we were given a data set of millions of surveillance camera images and asked to track people across views. And so I was kind of wrestling with this, you know, is this okay? And just the fact that this is kind of widely accepted to conferences and all this sort of stuff, I started asking all of these questions. And so like surveillance is one. There's also lots of engineers working on ad clicks, attention engineering, and all these sorts of applications that aren't great for humanity, I would say. Other issues with the way that it's done at the moment are with ownership and also funding models. And so we talked about the data ownership issue already. There's also the IP ownership issue. So when I join a company, I sign a contract that gives away ownership of all of my ideas and inventions. And so that means that, you know, all of this IP is getting centralized in the hands of tech companies, which obviously isn't a good thing as well. And it's not just tech companies, but it's also universities. And so if I was working in a university trying to spin out with a startup, and the university takes 10% of the company that spins out because they own the IP. And for that 10%, they don't even give you back the IP, they rent it back to you indefinitely. Rent your own ideas back to you is how I tend to describe it. So all of this just didn't seem fair. And in Web3, we talk a lot about giving ownership back to the creators, and usually we mean artists, but I also think it's really important to give it ownership back to the technical and scientific creators, and share the value that those inventions generate. And also, funding is an issue. We were trying to start a startup previously, and because we came from the university, there was a more complicated cap table, and so because of that, we had to go through government funding agencies. And I think at the time that we started Algovera, we had been trying to get funding for the previous startup for 18 months. And then we came across the Ocean ecosystem, wrote a grant, and we were funded within 2 months and able to hire people for the first time. So this is kind of the difference between Web 2 and Web 3 funding. And that's why, you know, ended up leaving the Web 2 world and coming to Web 3. Of course, the energy of all the people, that's another huge plus. Yeah, so even apart from all of this, launching AI startups is really hard, and we learned some of the issues when we were working on our previous startup. So for example, it's really expensive because you need a lot of compute, so that's infrastructure and maintenance costs. It's also really difficult to cover all the edge cases. The distribution of data in the real world has a long tail, and so it might be easy to train a machine learning model that works 80 or 90% of the time, but to get that final 10% is really, really, really tough. And that's the reason we still don't have self-driving cars, is because there's so many of these edge cases. It's really hard to train models to cover all of these. And also, AI startups are different to traditional software startups, which have really strong network effects, and it's not clear that those apply to AI startups at the moment for various reasons, including edge cases and things like this. And also, like what most AI startups do for the first 1 or 2 years of their existence is to basically just focus on collecting a data set. And so there's no data marketplaces available where you can, there might be an existing data set that you could use to train a model, but because they're not accessible at the moment, because they're either siloed in universities or somewhere else, a lot of work tends to be repeated. And so that's why we're so excited about this new data infrastructure, where maybe you can, instead of spending 2 years capturing a data set, maybe you can pay universities more easily for their data instead of negotiating licenses with a huge amount of different universities, for example. And also, data science collaboration is really complex. So it's different to traditional software development in that you have more stakeholders. So for example, this hackathon that we're running, it requires domain experts coming together with data scientists, as well as many other stakeholders. And in traditional software development, you don't tend to have a domain expert who could be, a neuroscientist or, a surgeon who knows the data really well and also assists in evaluating the results. And so we're trying to figure out how we can, encourage this sort of collaboration in a digital environment. Yeah, so all of the stuff that I've talked about led to the formation of Algovera. So as I said before, we found it much easier to get funding in the Web3 world, and we want to also pass that on to new AI startups. We also want to give data scientists ownership of what they create, in contrast with tech companies. And also, we don't want to tell people top down what to work on as much as possible. We want to empower people to come up with their own ideas bottom up. And our hypothesis on this is that if people come up with their own ideas, we think they're much more likely to work on things that are good for the world. And at the moment, we have a huge amount of engineers in the world who are working on things that aren't necessarily good, like I said. So yeah, overall, our main goal is to disintermediate big tech. So we're asking the question, is the tech company a middleman? Just like the banks were a middleman for DeFi and Bitcoin, can we remove the middleman? And do we now have the tools that we need with Web3 to coordinate as independent stakeholders and come up with really cool AI applications? There's still a lot of challenges in Web3 for doing this. So, we're building a whole new data infrastructure and onboarding so much data that's never been onboarded before. And so there was already a lack of data scientists in the Web2 world. And there's an even bigger lack of data scientists who know how to do data science in the Web3 world. And for some reason, we found that out of all of the different backgrounds, data scientists seem to be underrepresented in Web3. We have legal, we have artists, lots of people coming over, but for some reason, it hasn't happened with data scientists, and we're trying to figure out why that is. On top of this onboarding issue, the workflow for data scientists is also quite different in Web3. So for example, working with the data infrastructure and data marketplaces is all quite different. Also working with private AI techniques, such as compute to data, federated learning, it all results in a different workflow for the data scientist, because we're used to being able to download the data locally and train a model. And then if it doesn't work on a sample, we can look at the image or whatever and see exactly why. And so now, by sending the algorithm to the data, it reduces the amounts that you can see. And it just means that it's a bit more difficult and just a different workflow. And the other thing is that we found there was a lack of libraries and tools in Web3. So Ocean has a great Python library, But what it really deals with is, the Web3 functionality in terms of, initializing wallets and things like that, which data scientists don't really care about. So we're trying to abstract away a lot of the stuff that data scientists don't care about, just so they can do what they want to do, which is data science. So we often describe Algovera in 3 layers. So we have the community layer. So this is, we spent a lot of time building our community, probably the first like 5 months. And a lot of our community building was inspired by Kernel, which is an accelerator that we did. And so, yeah, we hold weekly events, which I'll talk about a bit in the next slides. But really, we just want to, we don't want it to be a kind of anonymous thing with community members. We really want to provide a space where people can, get to know each other like you would if you were working in a traditional tech company, because we think that's important. The next layer is technology. So I just touched on some of these, and I'll touch on more soon. But yeah, just how we bring all of these different Web3 technologies together, whether it's data marketplaces and some others, and how do we make it easier to use all of those technologies. And then the final layer is commercialization. So as I mentioned, we want to, our ultimate goal is for data scientists to work independently outside of big tech companies. And if we want to achieve that, we need to allow data scientists to monetize their work and their creations. And so that's where the commercial layer comes in. And I'll talk more about that in a second as well. Yeah, so in terms of community, we host events, lots of different types of events. It could be anything from hacking sessions where we do live coding together on data science problems in Web3, and like juntos, as we call them, which are basically conversations that kind of explore interesting topics. We also have a weekly reading group at the moment. We have pods, which are like working groups, which is where people can contribute to the workings of Algovera DAO. We also encourage people to propose pods. So ideally, these would be driven by community members instead of assigned top down by us. So if any of our community can think of something that Algovera really needs, we encourage them to propose a pod and try and get a team together to address that problem. And then we're hoping, we do quite a bit of education as well, like training people up, and we hope to formalize this in the form of Algovera Academy at some point in the future. So in terms of the technology, we've talked a lot about data marketplaces, but as I've mentioned before, the data itself is just the start. We also need to decentralize the cloud infrastructure. So that includes cloud storage. So we want to try and use decentralized storage as much as possible. We also want to work towards decentralized compute in future. So at the moment, a lot of it is done just on AWS. We also want to work with the organization and governance aspects. And so that's where some of these DAO frameworks come in. So how can we coordinate data scientists online? So one thing that's really important is to have access to a shared treasury, and that's where things like Gnosis Safe come in. Because if you want to work on a project with data scientists all over the world, you need access to a shared treasury, right? Also, how can you vote and govern the direction of the project? We use things like Snapchat. And eventually we want to build our own DAO framework. So what we found is that all of the existing DAO frameworks are targeted towards general Web3 users and not specifically to the needs of data science teams. So for example, it's not currently possible to publish an algorithm asset through a DAO. And we think that that's something that would be really useful. So if you work with a distributed data science team and you come up with something cool, wouldn't it be cool if you could publish that through the DAO and then share the value generated by that? So at the moment, it's not currently possible. And so, yeah, in future, we want to build our own DAO framework. And then one of the last bubbles there is private AI. So OpenMind is a really cool community of people working on private AI technologies. And so we're trying to investigate how can we incorporate more of these private AI technologies into the Ocean marketplace, for example. The one that everyone uses at the moment is compute to data, but there's many more than this. Like, for example, federated learning, differential privacy, a huge amount of techniques that can help to improve the privacy when we're doing machine learning. And then another thing that we do is we've been creating tools that make it easier for data scientists to work with the decentralized AI stack. So that includes integrating Jupyter, which is a computing platform that's really popular with data scientists. We integrated it with MetaMask. So as I said before, the Ocean Python library you have to use a lot of lines of code to do things like initialize your wallet and buy data tokens. But by integrating MetaMask with Jupyter, you can now do all of that through MetaMask itself, which means that the code that you write is just reserved for the data science things that you need to do. And we're also integrating with Hugging Face, which is an online community of data scientists. They have a really cool hub for data sets and algorithms. It's all open source. But the issue with it is that they're a Web 2 company, and they expect their users to contribute to the platform for free, and they don't reward their users in terms of the value that they create for Hugging Face. So wouldn't it be cool if we had a Hugging Face hub that actually shared the value generated by the platform with its users? And that would mean that the users don't need to work full-time in big tech, but maybe they can quit their jobs and just work on open source. So that's kind of the dream. Okay, and then commercial, I mentioned before, we want to try and support as many independent data science teams as possible. So one of the ways that we do this is freelance work. Another is like tournaments with prizes, and also hackathons like this where prizes are available. And we also ran our first round of our grants program, a small grants program, so about $1,000 each, and we funded 8 independent AI teams who we set up as DAOs with shared treasury and voting. And now, so we have 8 independent AI teams currently working on products that build on top of Ocean and Algovera Technologies, which is really cool. And then the marketplace is a really important component because that's where data scientists can sell what they create. And so this kind of comes under commercial and also a bit under R&D as well. But what we're trying to figure out is how do different types of stakeholders come together to create really useful things. And so, as I mentioned at the start, data science requires lots of different types of stakeholders. And what we're seeing in Web3 at the moment is people are forming their own DAOs, like really small DAOs. So for example, Algovera is a data science DAO. Lynx is what we refer to as a domain expert DAO because they know they're in the domain of neuroscience and health tech. And then there's also other DAOs for doing things like crowdsourcing data, which is how we would define what data union are. And maybe in future, there's going to be DAOs for designers. Maybe there's going to be commercial DAOs that are just, commercial stakeholders. And the question is, if everyone's in their own DAO, how do all of these DAOs come together to build something multidisciplinary? And so that's what experiments like this during the hackathon are working with, to try and figure out what does coordination look like between all of these different stakeholders, how can we improve that coordination? And so, yeah, that's why we're so excited about this project in particular, because we're bringing together neuroscientists with data scientists and some other different stakeholders. So yeah, I'm just really excited to see what we can come up with. And so, yeah, that's it for me. Does anyone have any questions?
Cool. Okay. I don't think there's any questions. Thank you very much, Richard. I watched that this morning and I enjoyed it just as much the second time this afternoon. So thank you.
Maybe it got better.
I just wanted to give a little bit of an overview of the big picture before we do like a deep dive into the logistics briefly. So, the aim of the joint hackathon is to collaborate and learn together about all the different topics that we've just discussed, and to form an early community of people who are interested in using data science and AI to analyze biometric data with Web3 tools. Just in terms of like the values of the hackathon and the code of conduct, like we want to say like we really value the participation of everybody, and we want everybody to have an enjoyable and fulfilling experience. So we ask you all to respect the other attendees. We've also sent you a code of conduct with some more details on this, but essentially be mindful of the words you choose, and we won't tolerate harassment. And if anybody feels uncomfortable at any time, please just email myself or Alex. Also, the hack is open source, therefore all the code should be licensed under a permissible license. And more details on this can be found in the hack terms and conditions. Also, just to confirm that you agree with the hack terms and conditions, we just need you to reply to the email that Alex sent out. I think it was yesterday or the day before. Okay, cool. So Alex, do you want to go over the hack criteria next, please?
Yeah, I can go over the hack criteria. I've sent it out, and if you didn't get an email from me, please let me know. I've also attached a document on the Algovera Discord inside the neuroscience channel, which is the document with all the necessary links, but we'll just go over it quickly. So the kickoff is today. The hackathon starts GMT midnight, so in a few hours. And then it goes on until the 24th of March. So midnight on the 24th of March. So straddling the 24th to the 25th. We'll have a check-in halfway through on the 18th of March, and the closing ceremony will be on Friday the 25th of March. So it runs for a little under 2 weeks, which I thought was a good time. We actually shortened it slightly, so it's not going over the weekend, because we don't want to force people, we don't want people to take up 2 weekends, because it's just a bit too much, too many weekends. So we will finish on the Thursday, the 24th of March. Other than that, the only other things I can think of in terms of, the prizes, there's top 3 prizes for submissions, and also best sportsmanship prize, or best peer-to-peer contributor. As Sarah mentioned, everyone who finishes the hack gets a POAP, which is going to be really cool, because it will enable you develop a sandbox, but could be other things we're thinking about today. So that would be really cool. We love POAPs. And so other than that, submissions. So submissions throughout the hack, please make sure your repository is public, because otherwise it doesn't work with compute to data. Is that correct, Richard? Yeah. And also make sure you have a clear README, and to present your work, it will be a 5-minute video explaining your approach and your results. If you're unable to do a video, obviously just get in touch and we can figure something else out, but it's just to present your work. And there'll be a form sent out later in the last week to submit your hack. So the hack criteria falls under accuracy on training and validation data, accuracy on test data, problem solving and teamwork, understanding of compute to data, and clarity of presentation. Accuracy on training and validation data, that's what's going to be run on Ocean's compute to data infrastructure. The accuracy on test data will be tested by our team, so Algovera-LYNX team. So you don't have to worry about using compute to data for that. The problem solving and teamwork, this just comes down to you're able to clearly define the problem that's being solved. Is your team led well? Are you using best practices? And also, is it a healthy environment, and are less technical team members being encouraged to learn and contribute to the project? Because, I've been in projects before where it's very technical, but more maybe when I was a junior developer and people are more technical than I am, and I don't get to do things. And then I've been on teams where I've learned so much from these things. So we just want to encourage, the main aim of this is to just encourage learning, and how we can how can we do this, because it's so new to everyone. I mean, I think the computer data on Ocean was only developed this time last year or something. I don't know, you guys could tell me more, Richard or Robin, but I'm pretty sure it was this time last year. So this is super, super, in a way, cutting edge. So it's really cool that you're all here. And also understanding of computer data. So that's just were you able to understand it? Did any issues come up? Were you able to troubleshoot them? And troubleshooting is everything. So that's why they getting in touch with us and asking what's going on, asking other team members what's going on. So yeah, and then clarity of presentation is just, and this includes the video, but also presentation of code. Don't want to see any commented out code. I want to see good comments in the code, clear structure, clean, nice variable names, etc. So yeah, that's it in terms of the instructions. And over to you, Sarah, I think.
Cool. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, just wanted to add, if you have any problems, just the Discord channel's there. So just drop in the Discord and ask your questions to each other as well. So I just wanted to explain a bit about speakers briefly. So we've got 4 speakers lined up. I'm still waiting for confirmation of some RSVPs, but there'll be one 1-hour session next week and one 1-hour session the week after. Each session will have half and half. So there'll be a neurotech talk and also sort of a bioethics talk as well. And what else did I need to say? Oh, notebooks. So Richard, do you want to just briefly give a little bit of an overview on the notebooks?
Sure. Yeah. So because the computer data is so new, we've come up with some notebooks just to show you, get you up to speed with it, basically. So hopefully they help everyone to get to a certain level, but just ask as many questions as you want, and we'll support. Yeah, like Alex said, it's just such new technology, and the algorithms that you create will be some of the first ever on the Ocean marketplace. So yeah, it's really cutting edge, but of course that means there's less resources and things like that. But we think we know what we're doing, and so we think we'll be able to help you out. But yeah, hopefully the notebooks get you to a certain point.
Oh, and just one more thing to add, we're using test network, so no money will be using. We're using RINC-B, and in the instructions document I've linked some faucets, and that's just where you can get free, or get some test tokens to your wallet. So get some Ocean tokens, and you'll need some ETH as well.
Thank you. Cool. And then, so in terms of the documentation, Alex has linked this a few times in various places, but there's a hack criteria document. And then I also created a dataset document, which gives you a bit more detail about the actual data set that we're using for anyone who's interested. So the different tasks in there, the sort of electrodes. And I think that's pretty much it. So Alex also sent out the teams and allocated the teams. And now we've got a quick opportunity to go to GatherTown and just meet each other, hang out if you've got time. If not, don't worry. GatherTown will be there the whole time. So if you and your teams can meet in there throughout the hackathon, if you want to, you can sit by the virtual fire and chat about neuroscience if you want. So yeah, has anyone got any questions then before we close the meeting and then hop over to GatherTown?
I have a question. So like, I know I read the names of my teammates in the list, but I don't know how to contact them. I mean, most of the time these names don't match their names in Discord. So would it be possible that maybe everybody has to give out their Discord name too? Then I can add them to a group or friend them or something like this. But I mean, I can also ask in the channel for these people. But yeah.
Did you get my email? Did you get my email?
I think I got several emails from you, but isn't this
with all the team members? Your team members are on the email.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't have the Discord names of the team members. I only have the real names, I think.
Okay, we'll try and I'll try and find those out for everyone. Yeah, I'll try and find those out for everyone. But I think best way forward right now is just to reply to the email and see if you can.
Okay.
With your Discord,
I could just try to find them. Okay.
Yeah, but I will send. I will try and get everyone's Discord, so that you can easily contact them.
We can send you our Discord names, so you have everyone's.
Yes, I will request that, or you can do it now in this chat as well. But yeah. Anyway, let's go to GatherTown.
If you chat, because I'm going to close it.
Yeah. If everyone just replies, if everyone on this thing just replies to in the Discord, if you reply to, you just say what you're called in the name column, and then just put like, this is me. Hi, I'm blah blah blah. That would be great. Thanks.
Okay.
Cool. Right.
Cool. Okay.
Thank you, everybody. I'll see you in seconds. Bye.
There's a link in the chat to GatherTown if anyone doesn't know how to get there. So I'll hold on for seconds until everyone leaves.